Kang Daeho walked into his office like any other morning. He worked at the Galactic Council's Human Affairs Division. His job was simple: keep track of what humans were doing across the galaxy. Usually his computer screen was full of messages, trade reports from Earth, mining updates from human colonies, daily chatter from the human embassy. Today his screen was black. Daeho frowned and tapped the screen. Nothing. He checked his connection. It was working fine. He tried accessing the human communication networks. Still nothing. No signals from any human world. No messages from any human ship. Complete silence. This was strange. Humans were known for talking too much. They sent reports about everything. Weather updates, trade numbers, even what they ate for breakfast. They never stopped talking. But now 847 human star systems were completely quiet. Daeho called Park Min-soo at the Communications Ministry. Min-soo's voice sounded worried through the speaker. "I was just about to call you," Min-soo said. "All human frequencies went dark at the same time. Every single one. I've never seen anything like it." "When did this happen?" Daeho asked. "About 6 hours ago, right at 0300 Galactic Standard Time. One moment they were transmitting normally, the next moment nothing." Daeho felt something cold in his stomach. Humans were many things, but they were not careless with their technology. Their communication systems were the most reliable in the galaxy. If they went quiet, something was very wrong. He walked down the hall to the main council chamber. The morning session was already starting. Ambassador Velthara from the Zentari Empire was giving a speech about trade regulations. Her forearms moved gracefully as she spoke. The Zentari always thought they were better than everyone else. High Chancellor Morden sat in his crystal chair. The crystalline beings believed they were the smartest species in the galaxy. His body glowed with soft blue light as he listened to Velthara's speech. Daeho waited for a break in the discussion. Then he stood up. "I need to report something important," he said. "All human communications have stopped." The chamber became quiet. Then Velthara laughed. "It sounded like breaking glass. Probably another human military exercise," she said. "They love playing with their primitive weapons." Other council members nodded. The humans were always seen as the younger species, useful but not very important. They had only joined the galaxy community 300 years ago. That was very recent compared to species like the Zentari, who had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years. "It's not an exercise," Daeho said. "This is different. Every human world, every human ship, every human station, all silent at exactly the same time." Chancellor Morden's light pulsed slowly. Perhaps their central communication hub failed. Humans rely too much on centralized systems. But Dr. Yoon Hae-jin stood up from the back of the chamber. She was a xenosociologist who studied alien cultures. She had spent 40 years learning about humans. "No," she said quietly. "Humans don't have centralized communication. Their systems are distributed, designed to work even if parts fail. This is something else." Hae-jin had read every human history book she could find. She knew about their old wars, their migrations, their habits, and she remembered something that made her hands shake. "In human history," she continued, "when they decide to leave a place, they don't argue, they don't negotiate, they don't make threats, they just leave, quietly, without warning." The chamber was silent now. Even Velthara had stopped her dismissive gesturing. "Send a patrol ship to the Sol system," Chancellor Morden ordered. "Check on Earth directly." The patrol ship was fast. It only took 6 hours to reach Earth's solar system. Captain Jin Suho commanded the ship. He had visited human space many times. He knew what to expect, but when they arrived, something was wrong. Earth was still there. The blue and green planet looked normal from space. The orbital stations were in their proper positions. The moon bases showed normal power signatures. Everything looked exactly as it should, except there were no ships moving between the stations. No communication signals. No signs of life. "Take us closer," Suho ordered. They flew toward the largest orbital station. Through the windows they could see inside. The lights were on. The air systems were working. But no people were moving around. They docked and went inside. The station was warm and clean. Coffee cups sat on tables still warm. Computer screens showed normal operations. But every human was gone. "Check the other stations," Suho said. "The same thing everywhere. Empty stations with everything working perfectly. No signs of struggle. No damage, no bodies. The humans had simply vanished. Suho's communication officer called from the bridge. "Captain, we're getting readings from Earth's surface. The cities are still powered, but no life signs. They flew down to Earth. New York looked normal from the air. Streets full of parked cars, buildings with lights on, parks with flowers blooming, but no people walking around. They landed in Central Park." Suho stepped out of his ship and listened. Cities were supposed to be noisy. This one was silent except for the wind. They walked to the nearest building. The doors were unlocked. Inside, they found more of the same. Offices with computers still running. Restaurants with food still cooking in automated kitchens. Libraries with books left open on tables, but no humans anywhere. Suho picked up a tablet from a desk. It was still logged into someone's account. The last entry was a grocery list. Milk, bread, fruit for kids. Normal, everyday things. Not the words of someone planning to disappear forever. His team checked building after building. The same story everywhere. It was as if 8 billion humans had been doing normal things one moment, then simply walked away the next moment. But where did they go? And how did they all leave at exactly the same time? Suho called the council. "Earth is empty," he reported. "But everything else is normal. It's like they just left." Back at the council, Dr. Heijin was reading old human texts. She found something that made her blood run cold. An ancient human saying, "When you can't change the people around you, change the people around you." The humans hadn't been kidnapped. They hadn't been attacked. They had chosen to leave. All of them. At the same time. Without a word of explanation. And if Dr. Heijin was right about human history, they were never coming back. Captain Lee Junho led the biggest investigation team the council had ever sent out. His job was to visit every human world and figure out what happened. The team had scientists, engineers, and experts from 12 different species. They all wanted answers. The first stop was Mars. Like Earth, everything was working but empty. The terraforming machines were still running. The underground cities had power and air. The farms were growing food. But no humans were taking care of anything. Dr. Choi So-young was the team's xenoarchaeologist. She studied old alien cultures, but now she was looking at a culture that had just vanished. She spent hours in the abandoned Mars Council embassy, going through human records. What she found made her sick. The humans had kept detailed files on everything, every trade meeting, every diplomatic talk. Every time a council member had dismissed their ideas or treated them like children. Page after page of careful notes about every insult, every condescending comment, every time they were ignored. "Look at this," So-young called to Captain Lee. She held up a thick folder marked Council Session 7234, Trade Rights Discussion. Lee read over her shoulder. The human ambassador had proposed a new trade agreement that would benefit all species equally. The Zentari representative had responded, "Perhaps when humans mature enough to understand real economics, we can discuss this again." The human ambassador had simply said, "Thank you for your input," and made a note in the file. They wrote down everything, So-young said. Every slight, every dismissal, every time we treated them like they didn't matter. Lee found another file. This one was about technology sharing. The humans had offered to teach other species how to build better medical equipment. The crystalline hegemony had said, "We don't need lessons from a species that just learned to fly between stars." Again, the humans had politely thanked them and made a note. "How long were they keeping these records?" Lee asked. So-young checked the oldest files. 300 years. Since the day they joined the council, they documented every interaction. The team moved to the industrial areas of Mars. Engineer Bae Sung-min was amazed by what he found. The factories were still running themselves. Automated systems built products with no human oversight. But the products were strange. "Captain," Sung-min called from a medical supply factory, "look at this production schedule." The factory was making medicine, but not human medicine. It was producing treatments for Zentari joint rot, a disease that only affected the four-armed species. Another production line made atmospheric processors designed specifically for Corvani breathing requirements. "Why are human factories making alien products?" Lee asked. Sung-min checked the computer systems. What he found was disturbing. The humans had spent decades quietly learning exactly what every other species needed. They knew which medicines each alien race required. They understood the environmental needs of every planet in the Council, and they had been making everything. "Captain, I think the humans were supplying the entire galaxy," Sung-min said. "Not just trading with us, actually keeping us alive." The team moved to the research facilities. What they found there was even more shocking. The humans had technology that was decades ahead of anything the Council had seen. Quantum computers that made crystalline technology look primitive. Medical devices that could cure diseases the Council thought were impossible to treat. Dr. Yoon Nam-soo, a technology expert, stared at a machine he couldn't understand. "This is fusion technology," he said. "But it's nothing like what they showed us in their official reports." The humans had always presented themselves as slightly behind the other species technologically. They asked for help with basic problems. They seemed grateful for advice from more advanced civilizations. But the hidden research labs told a different story. The humans had been decades ahead of everyone else. They just hadn't told anyone. "Why hide this?" Lee asked. Nam-soo studied the research notes left behind. "I think they were trying not to scare us," he said. "Look at these dates. They developed this fusion technology 50 years ago, but they kept using less efficient power sources in public. The team found production facilities on asteroids that nobody knew existed. These hidden factories could build things that the best Council scientists thought were impossible. Starships with faster-than-light drives that worked better than anything the Zentari had. Terraforming equipment that could make dead planets livable in months instead of centuries. Engineer Kim Tae-min examined a manufacturing complex built inside a hollowed-out asteroid. "Captain, this one facility could supply technology for the entire Trilaxian Confederation, and we never knew it was here." "How many of these are there?" Lee asked. Tae-min checked the navigation records. "At least 200 that I can find. Maybe more." The humans were mass-producing advanced technology in secret, but the most disturbing discovery came from the asteroid facility's computer systems. The humans had been carefully controlling what they shared with other species, not by refusing to help, but by helping too much. When the Corvani needed better atmospheric processors, humans gave them excellent devices. But they also made sure the Corvani never learned how to build the devices themselves. When the Zentari wanted improved weapons, humans provided superior designs. But the Zentari remained dependent on human manufacturing. They weren't just helping us, Nam-soo realized. They were making sure we stayed dependent on them. Dr. So-young found the evidence in the diplomatic files. Every time humans offered to teach other species how to build things themselves, the offers were politely declined. The Zentari preferred to buy finished products. The crystalline beings thought they were too advanced to need human lessons. The Trilaxians said they had their own methods, so the humans had stopped offering to teach. They just kept providing what everyone needed. "We did this to ourselves," So-young said quietly. "They tried to make us partners. We chose to be customers instead." The investigation team spent weeks cataloging human technology. Each discovery was more advanced than the last. Medical equipment that could regrow limbs, agricultural systems that could feed billions with minimal resources, transportation technology that made travel between star systems as easy as walking to the next room. But the humans had never used any of this technology to threaten other species. They hadn't demanded special treatment or tried to take over the galaxy. They had quietly made everyone else's life better while keeping their real capabilities secret. Captain Lee stood in an empty command center on a human space station. The screen still showed data from across the galaxy. Trade routes, resource needs, diplomatic schedules. The humans had been managing the entire galactic civilization from behind the scenes. They were never the junior partners, he said to his team. "We were their students, and we never even knew we were in school." Engineer Sung-min found one last piece of evidence that explained everything. In the deepest part of the asteroid facilities, he discovered a massive computer system. It contained detailed plans for transitioning galactic civilization away from human support. The humans had been preparing for their departure for 50 years. Every piece of technology they provided came with detailed instructions for maintenance and repair. Every trade route had backup plans that didn't require human participation. Every critical system had redundancies that other species could manage. They weren't abandoning us, Sung-min realized. They were trying to teach us how to survive without them. But the teaching materials required something the Council species weren't ready for: cooperation. The instructions assumed that different species would work together, share knowledge, and help each other learn. The humans had built a galactic civilization based on cooperation, but they were the only ones who believed in it. Now they were gone, and everyone else had to figure out how to work together for the first time in 3 centuries. 3 months after the humans disappeared, the galaxy started falling apart. Administrator Kim Tae-yeon worked at the Galactic Trade Commission. Her job was to make sure goods moved smoothly between different worlds. For 300 years, this had been easy work. Trade routes were stable, suppliers were reliable, and everything ran like clockwork. Now her computer screen was full of red warning lights. "Ma'am?" her assistant called from across the room. "The Zentari military is reporting equipment failures. Their quantum processors are breaking down." Taeyeon pulled up the supply records. The Zentari had been buying quantum processors from human manufacturers for over a century. Simple trade goods, nothing special. Except now she realized that no other species knew how to make them. "What about replacement parts?" she asked. "That's the problem. All the replacement parts came from human factories too." Taeyeon felt panic rising in her throat. She checked the records for other species. The same pattern everywhere. Critical technologies that everyone thought were simple trade goods were actually complex systems that only humans could produce. The first real crisis hit the Corvani homeworlds. The Corvani breathed methane, not oxygen like most species. Their planets needed special atmospheric processors to maintain the right gas mixture in their cities. Dr. Lim Woo-jin was the council's chief medical officer. He got the emergency call at 3 in the morning. "Doctor, we have a situation on Corvani Prime," the voice said. "The atmospheric processors are failing. We're losing breathable atmosphere in the capital city." Lim jumped out of bed and ran to his office. He pulled up the technical specifications for Corvani atmospheric processors. What he saw made his blood freeze. The processors were incredibly complex machines. They didn't just filter methane from the air. They created it from basic chemical compounds, balanced it with other gases, and maintained precise pressure levels. The technology was far more advanced than anyone had realized, and every single processor had been made by humans. "How long do they have?" Lim asked. "Maybe a week before the atmosphere becomes unbreathable, 2 weeks before people start dying." Lim called every non-human technology expert he could find. None of them understood how the atmospheric processors worked. The human-built machines were too advanced for anyone else to repair. "Can we evacuate the city?" Lim asked. "Doctor, it's not just one city. It's happening on all 47 Corvani worlds. We're talking about evacuating 60 billion people." Meanwhile, the food crisis was starting. Economic analyst Oh Seo-jin was tracking agricultural output across the galaxy. The numbers were terrifying. The Corvani agricultural worlds had been producing enough food to feed 3 different species. But their farming systems depended on those same atmospheric processors. Without the right air mixture, the crops were dying. The Trilaxian Confederation was facing a different problem. Their food came from ocean farms that used human-designed water purification systems. The systems were failing, and the ocean farms were producing toxic algae instead of edible fish. How did we not know about this? Chancellor Mordun demanded at the emergency council session. Seo-jin had spent weeks analyzing the data. "The humans never advertised their role," she said. "They sold us the equipment and walked away. We never asked how it worked. We just used it." The Zentari Empire was discovering that their military dominance was an illusion. Admiral Velkarin stood before the council with his forearms trembling. "Our weapon systems are failing," he admitted. "The targeting computers, the shield generators, the engine systems, all human technology. We thought we were buying simple components. We didn't realize we were buying our entire military capability." Dr. Yoon Hae-jin had been researching human psychology since the disappearance. What she found explained everything. Humans have a concept called learned helplessness, Marchi told the council. When someone always solves your problems for you, you stop learning how to solve them yourself. The humans didn't make us dependent on purpose. We made ourselves dependent by always choosing the easy solution. The evidence was in the old council records. 50 years ago, humans had offered to teach other species how to build atmospheric processors. The Corvani had said, "Why learn when we can just buy them from you?" 40 years ago, humans had suggested joint research projects to develop better medical technology. The crystalline beings had said, "We prefer to maintain our own research independence." 30 years ago, humans had proposed sharing basic manufacturing techniques. The Trilaxians had said, We have our own traditional methods. Every time the humans offered to teach, the other species had politely declined. It was easier to buy finished products than to learn how to make them. We trained them to take care of us, Heijin said sadly, and they did exactly what we asked. The cascade of failures was accelerating. Power plants on dozens of worlds were shutting down because they used human-made fusion reactors that needed specific maintenance procedures. Hospital equipment was failing because it relied on human-manufactured medical supplies. Transportation systems were breaking down because they used human-designed navigation computers. Most terrifying of all was the discovery that human technology had been preventing natural disasters. Weather control systems on storm-prone planets were human-built. Earthquake prediction networks used human sensors. Even the asteroid defense systems that protected inhabited worlds from space rocks were human technology. They weren't just part of our civilization, Oh Seo-jin reported to an emergency council session. They were holding our civilization together, and we never noticed because everything worked so well. The Trilaxian Confederation made the first desperate attempt to reverse engineer human technology. Their best scientists worked around the clock trying to understand how atmospheric processors functioned. After 2 weeks, they gave up. The technology was too advanced. It required knowledge of physics and chemistry that was decades beyond their current understanding. Worse, it was designed to work as part of integrated systems. Understanding one piece required understanding dozens of others. It would take us 50 years to develop this technology from scratch, the Trilaxian science minister reported, and that's if we had the basic knowledge to start with, which we don't. The Corvani tried a different approach. They sent ships to human worlds looking for maintenance manuals or instruction guides. What they found was even more disturbing. The humans had left behind detailed instruction manuals for every piece of technology they had built. The manuals were complete, accurate, and written in simple language that any species could understand. But the instructions required cooperation between different species. The atmospheric processors couldn't be maintained by Corvani alone. They needed Zentari engineering skills, crystalline computational abilities, and Trilaxian chemical knowledge working together. The humans designed everything to require cooperation, the Corvani engineer reported. They built a galaxy where species had to work together to survive. But we never learned how to work together because they were doing it all for us. Dr. Lim stood in his medical center watching species die from diseases that humans could have cured easily. The medicines existed, sitting in human factories that were still producing them automatically. But nobody knew how to modify the production systems to make medicines for new diseases. They left us everything we needed, he said to his assistant, but they left it in a way that forces us to become better than we are. The first attempts at interspecies cooperation were disasters. The proud Zentari refused to admit they needed help from inferior species. The crystalline beings insisted on leading all projects even when they didn't understand the technology involved. The Trilaxians wanted to modify everything to fit their traditional methods. Meanwhile, billions of people were running out of food, medicine, and breathable air. Kim Tae-yeon stood in her empty Trade Commission office looking at reports of civilizational collapse across the galaxy. 300 years of steady progress was unraveling in 3 months, but in the data she saw something else. Species that had never worked together before were starting to reach out to each other, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. The humans hadn't just left them technology, they had left them a choice: learn to cooperate or watch civilization collapse. The galaxy was finally learning what the humans had been trying to teach for 3 centuries. But the lesson was coming at a terrible price. Supreme Chancellor An Boram had never called an emergency session this urgent before. Representatives from all major species crowded into the council chamber. The air was thick with panic and fear. "We are facing the complete collapse of galactic civilization," Boram announced. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she spoke. "We have perhaps 6 months before multiple species face extinction-level events." The numbers were terrifying. 30 billion Corvani were slowly suffocating as their atmospheric processors failed. The Trilaxian food supply was down to emergency rations. The Zentari military was defenseless without their human-built weapons. Even the crystalline beings who considered themselves the most advanced species in the galaxy were facing power shortages as their human-designed energy systems broke down. Intelligence Director Ryu Hyun-woo stood to present his findings. His team had spent 3 months analyzing every piece of evidence from human territories. What they discovered was both impressive and terrifying. The human departure was planned for at least 50 years, Ryu said. Every decision they made, every technology they shared, every trade agreement they signed, it was all part of a careful strategy. He activated a holographic display showing the timeline of human activities. Red dots marked key decisions that seemed innocent at the time, but now revealed their true purpose. 47 years ago, humans began quietly surveying uninhabited star systems beyond our current borders. They told us it was for scientific research. We now know they were looking for new places to live. The display showed dozens of unexplored regions where human survey ships had been active, systems so far away that the Council had never bothered to explore them. 39 years ago, humans started building automated manufacturing facilities in remote locations. They said it was for efficiency and cost reduction. We now know they were creating backup systems that could function without human oversight. 26 years ago, humans began sharing advanced medical and agricultural technology with all species simultaneously. They said it was for galactic prosperity. We now know they were making sure everyone could survive without them. If we learned to work together. The council chamber was silent. Every representative was beginning to understand the scope of human planning. Dr. Han Yun-soo, the galaxy's leading expert on human psychology, had spent months analyzing human behavior patterns. Her conclusions were devastating. This was not revenge, she told the council. This was not anger. The humans concluded that we were not ready for true partnership. They waited, hoped, and prepared alternatives for decades. But eventually they accepted that we would never see them as equals. She showed records of human proposals that had been rejected over the years, offers to share advanced technology, suggestions for joint research projects, proposals for economic partnerships based on mutual benefit rather than human service. Every time humans suggested true collaboration, we dismissed them. We preferred the comfortable arrangement where they provided solutions and we provided nothing of equal value. Chancellor Boram felt sick as she listened. She remembered voting against several human proposals over the years. At the time, they had seemed unnecessary or premature. Now she realized they had been offers of genuine partnership. The humans offered to teach us, Dr. Han continued. We preferred to remain students. They offered to be partners. We preferred to be customers. They offered to build a galaxy where all species worked together. We preferred a galaxy where they did all the work. The most disturbing revelation came from analyzing human communication patterns. Intelligence Director Ryu had found evidence that humans had been in contact with other species outside the Council's knowledge. We discovered quantum communication arrays in human territory that were transmitting to unknown locations, Ryu reported. The transmissions were encrypted, but we managed to decode some of them. The humans have been in contact with at least 12 species that we have never encountered. The implications were staggering. While the Council had believed they represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization, the humans had been part of a much larger community. A community that apparently didn't include the Council species. We think the humans were evaluating us, Ryu continued, deciding whether we were ready to join this larger community. The evidence suggests that we failed the evaluation. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin had been researching human historical patterns since the disappearance. What she found explained their methods. Humans have a concept called constructive disengagement, she explained to the Council. When they cannot change a situation through direct action, they remove themselves from the situation and let natural consequences teach the lessons they could not. The humans had tried direct teaching for centuries. When that failed, they had switched to indirect teaching. They had made themselves so essential that their absence would force the galaxy to learn cooperation or face collapse. They gave us a choice, Hae-jin said. Learn to work together or watch our civilization fall apart. They just didn't tell us we were being tested. The Council's attempts to contact the humans had all failed. Every human world was empty but maintained. The automated systems left behind were clearly designed to keep essential services running temporarily. But they were slowly breaking down without human maintenance. Supreme Chancellor Boram authorized desperate measures. Teams of the galaxy's best scientists were sent to study human technology. Diplomatic missions were sent to search for any clue about where humans had gone. Economic experts worked around the clock to find alternatives to human-supplied goods. All efforts failed. The technology was too advanced for reverse engineering. The humans had vanished without leaving any trace of their destination. And there were no alternatives to human-supplied goods because the humans had made themselves the sole suppliers of everything essential. We made ourselves completely dependent on them, economic analyst Oseo Jin reported, not because they forced us to, but because it was convenient. Every time we could choose between learning to do something ourselves or buying it from humans, we chose to buy it. The pattern was clear in the historical records. When the Corvani could have developed their own atmospheric technology, they chose to buy human processors instead. When the Zentari could have improved their own weapons, they chose to purchase human designs. When the Trilaxians could have enhanced their own agriculture, they chose to use human systems. We trained ourselves to be helpless, Seojin concluded. And the humans let us do it because we insisted on it. Dr. Han Yun-soo made the most chilling observation of all. The humans didn't abandon us out of frustration or anger. They graduated. They found or created a civilization that was ready for true partnership. We weren't ready, so they left us to figure out how to become ready. The evidence was in the quantum communications the humans had maintained with unknown species. Those communications showed patterns of mutual exchange, shared research, and collaborative problem-solving. The humans had been part of a true galactic community, just not the one centered around the Council. We thought we were the advanced civilization teaching the humans, Dr. Han continued. In reality, we were the students who kept failing the final exam. The humans were the teachers who finally decided we needed to learn without their help. Supreme Chancellor Boram stood before the Council as reports poured in of failing systems across the galaxy. Billions of beings were in immediate danger. Entire species faced extinction within months. But buried in the crisis reports, she noticed something else. For the first time in centuries, different species were actively working together. The Corvani were sharing atmospheric data with Zentari engineers. The Trilaxians were teaching chemical processes to crystalline researchers. Species that had barely spoken to each other for generations were suddenly cooperating out of desperate necessity. The humans left us a final lesson, Boram realized. They made it impossible for us to survive alone. We either learn to truly work together or we fail as a civilization. The question was whether they could learn fast enough to save themselves. The humans had taken 3 centuries to become ready for true partnership. The galaxy had maybe 6 months to figure out what the humans had been trying to teach them all along. And somewhere in the vast, unexplored regions of space, the humans were probably watching to see if their former students could finally graduate. 1 year after humanity's disappearance, Galactic historian Jang Min-ho published his complete analysis of human council relations. The document was 8,000 pages long and took him 6 months to write. It was the most important book ever written about galactic civilization. The title was simple: The Teachers We Never Recognized. Min-ho had studied every interaction between humans and other species for 300 years. Every trade agreement, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange. What he found changed how the galaxy understood everything. Humans were never the junior partners we thought they were, Min-ho wrote. They were the patient teachers, waiting for their students to mature enough for genuine cooperation. The evidence was overwhelming once you looked for it. In the early years after humans joined the Council, they had made countless offers to share knowledge. They wanted to teach other species how to build better medical equipment, more efficient power systems, and improved agricultural technology. Every offer had been politely declined. The Zentari had said, "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we have centuries of experience you lack." The crystalline beings had said, "Our methods are already superior to anything you could teach us." The Trilaxians had said, "We prefer to maintain our traditional approaches," so the humans had stopped offering to teach. Instead, they had started simply providing what everyone needed. Better medicine, better technology, better solutions to every problem. But they never explained how anything worked, because nobody had wanted to learn. "We trained them to be our caretakers," Min-ho concluded. "And they accepted the role because it was the only way we would accept their help." Ambassador Kwon Da-eun was searching through abandoned human facilities when she made the most important discovery since the disappearance. In a quantum data storage facility on one of Jupiter's moons, She found something that changed everything. A message from humanity, hidden in a quantum cache that only activated 1 year after their departure. Diane's hands shook as she activated the message. A simple holographic display appeared showing a human woman she didn't recognize. If you are viewing this message, it means we have been gone for exactly 1 year, the woman said. And it means you have survived long enough to start learning cooperation. Congratulations. The message was not an explanation or an apology. It was a gift. Detailed specifications for technologies that could sustain galactic civilization flowed across the display. Not just the technologies the humans had been providing, but improved versions that were easier to maintain and modify. We always hoped you would become our partners instead of our dependents, the woman continued. This technology is designed to require cooperation between species, not because we want to force you to work together, but because working together is the only way to build something greater than any of us could create alone. The message included star charts marking the locations of abundant resources that could replace human-supplied materials, detailed warnings about ecological challenges the galaxy would face in the coming decades, educational frameworks designed to help different species learn to collaborate effectively. Even in leaving, the humans had tried to ensure their former colleagues could survive and grow. We have found others who are ready for true partnership, the message concluded. When you are ready for the same kind of relationship, you will find us. But only when you are ready. Only when you have learned to be partners instead of students. Chancellor Seo Ji-hoon had been elected to lead the Council's restructuring efforts. The old system of species hierarchy was collapsing. The new system was being built on cooperation out of necessity. The humans left us a teaching tool, Ji-hoon told the reformed council. The crisis forced us to work together in ways that centuries of diplomacy could not achieve. The results were visible everywhere. Corvani atmospheric engineers were working with Zentari physicists to develop new air processing systems. Trilaxian biologists were collaborating with crystalline chemists to create new medicines. Species that had barely spoken to each other for generations were now sharing knowledge freely. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to survive. The first breakthrough came when a joint Corvani-Zentari team successfully modified a human atmospheric processor. Instead of just maintaining it, they actually improved it. The new design was more efficient and easier to repair. We're not just surviving, reported Dr. Kim Soo-jin, the project leader. We're actually building better solutions than what the humans left behind. Similar breakthroughs were happening across the galaxy. Multi-species research teams were solving problems that had seemed impossible when each species worked alone. The forced cooperation was producing innovations that surprised everyone involved. Dr. Yoon Hae-jin had been studying the social changes happening across the galaxy. What she found was remarkable. The species that are adapting best to the post-human galaxy are the ones that are changing how they think about themselves, she reported. Instead of competing for status, they're focusing on contributing to solutions. The Zentari military, once focused on dominance, was now using their organizational skills to coordinate rescue efforts on failing worlds. The crystalline beings were sharing their computational abilities to help other species understand complex technologies. The Trilaxians were teaching their agricultural knowledge to help with the food crisis. For the first time in galactic history, we're seeing true cooperation instead of just trade relationships, Hae-jin continued. The humans created a crisis that forced us to become better than we were. The changes weren't just technological, they were social and cultural. Young members of different species were learning to work together from an early age. Universities were offering joint degree programs that required students from multiple species to collaborate on projects. Even art and entertainment were becoming collaborative efforts between different cultures. 2 years after the human departure, the first interspecies families were forming. Adoption programs allowed orphaned young from one species to be raised by families from another. Translation technology was advancing rapidly as species learned to communicate more effectively with each other. We're becoming what the humans always hoped we could become, observed cultural analyst Park Dong-woo. A true galactic community, instead of just a collection of separate species that happened to trade with each other. But the most profound change was in how the galaxy viewed itself. The old council system had been based on hierarchy and competition. Each species had tried to prove they were more advanced or important than others. The new system was based on contribution and cooperation. Instead of competing to be the best, species were working together to solve the galaxy's problems. Chancellor Seo stood in the rebuilt council chamber looking out at representatives from dozens of species. But these weren't the same kind of representatives who had served before. These were scientists, engineers, teachers, and problem solvers working together on shared challenges. "The humans taught us our final lesson by leaving," Seo said to the assembled representatives. "They showed us that true advancement isn't about being better than others. It's about making everyone better together." The galaxy was finally understanding what it had lost. Not just a useful trading partner or a source of convenient technologies. They had lost a species that had spent centuries trying to be teachers, partners, and guides. The humans had believed that everyone could rise to become better than they were. And in the silence of the empty human territories, the galaxy was finally learning to hear its own potential. The last entry in historian Jiang Minho's book was a simple observation. The humans left us when we were ready to be left. Not when we thought we were ready, but when we actually were ready. They knew us better than we knew ourselves. And their greatest gift wasn't their technology. It was their faith that we could eventually become worthy of true partnership. 3 years after the departure, the first deep space exploration ships launched from the rebuilt galactic civilization. Their mission was not conquest or resource extraction. It was to find the humans and prove that their former students had finally learned to graduate. The ships carried messages of gratitude, samples of new technologies developed through interspecies cooperation, and most importantly, an invitation. An invitation for the humans to return not as teachers or caretakers, but as partners in a galaxy that had finally learned to work together. Whether the humans would accept that invitation remained to be seen. But for the first time in galactic history, the other species felt they might actually be worthy of the offer they were making. The galaxy had finally learned what the humans had been trying to teach for 3 centuries. The question now was whether they had learned it well enough to deserve a second chance.